Hi, and welcome to our course on creating a multi-page Bootstrap for website from scratch. My name is Lawrence, and I'm so excited to have the opportunity to present this course to you today. Within the upcoming lessons, we're going to be showing you how to use Bootstrap 4 and how you can build websites rapidly and easily using the Bootstrap framework. So what we have right now in front of you on the screen is the website that we're going to be building out. So this is a 4-page website. It's a modern website, fully responsive. So whenever we make it larger, we see that Bootstrap takes care of our responsiveness. We've got a home page, we've got an about, services, and contact. We're also going to be having images in the background here within the header section, as well as we're developing a footer with Font Awesome, and we've got some nice social icons here at the bottom. So I'm going to show you how to build out a website just like this one using Bootstrap, and we're going to work with this all the way from scratch, starting out with a blank HTML page and then building this entire website from scratch. Best of all, Bootstrap is front-end code only, so that means HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, so you don't need any servers to run it. All you need is a browser and then, of course, an editor in order to edit your code. We're also going to be showing you how you can get placeholder images, placeholder text, and build out and style out your website even if you don't have any content ready, as long as you do have the plan. And I'm going to be showing you how to do that as well, how we can plan out and how we can structure our website, present our website, and then go ahead and build as designed. So all of this is included within this course. So when you're ready, let's start building out some amazing things with Bootstrap. In this lesson, I want to give you a quick overview of the web page and web project that we're going to be building out. So this is going to be a 4-page website. It's going to have home, about, services, and contact. And we're going to be really focused on imagery for this project. So we're going to have really nice imagery right at the top of every page. We're going to have a different relevant image for each one of the pages. So you can see here the images in the background, and we've got the page information here. And then each page has its own unique setup. We use the Bootstrap grid quite a bit within the upcoming lessons in order to really structure the page. So we're looking at this, and we're going to use some of the key components such as the Jumbotron and then the grid, of course, and images. And the images, they're going to be all responsive. We're also going to use lists, grouping of lists, and also, again, the grid. So the grid is going to be really crucial within the upcoming lessons, and within every single one of these pages, we're going to be really making use of what Bootstrap has to offer with the grid. We're also going to be showing you cards. So Bootstrap 4 has cards, and it's a great way to output data and information on your web page. So we've got an example here of cards being used in order to structure that content even better. And then lastly, we're going to create that contact form, and the contact form is going to be just a simple Bootstrap contact form. And we're also going to use the Bootstrap buttons in the upcoming lessons. So we're putting together all of that information and bringing together what Bootstrap has to offer in the upcoming lessons to build out this multi-page website. We're also showing you how to include Font Awesome, to have these awesome little icons that can really bring your content to life. So we've got some links to social media. So naturally, we included the icons there at the bottom. And that's included in the footer of every page. So when you're ready, let's start building out this project from scratch. In this lesson, I'm going to be giving you a quick overview of the tools that I'm going to be using within this course and also the setup. So basically, I've got brackets open. So brackets is going to be the editor that I'm going to be using within the course in order to write the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And on my right-hand side, I've got the browser open. The browser that I'm going to be using is going to be Chrome. So this is the Open Chrome browser page. And in order to write code, we need to have an editor. So if you are looking for an editor to use, or if you want to use the same one I'm using within the course, the one I'm using is Brackets. It's open source. It's an Adobe product available at Brackets.io, and you can download it. It works across different systems. So whether you're on a Mac or a Windows machine, you can download Brackets and use it in order to write code. And the other resource that I'm going to be using is Bootstrap. So Bootstrap, for those of you that aren't familiar with Bootstrap, Bootstrap is the most popular front-end framework. So basically, it allows you to build modern websites that are fully responsive really rapidly. All you have to do is set up the HTML structure and then use the Bootstrap CSS classes, bring them into your project in order to style and make your web page look responsive. And it also has a lot of different components that you can make use of within your web project. So there's some examples of some Bootstrap sites. So you can see that they've got a lot of these really cool components. And at the very core of Bootstrap is the grid. And I'm going to be showing you how to use that within this course as well, and how to bring in the appropriate classes in order to build out your web page. Navigation is also a really important key to Bootstrap, and Bootstrap handles the navigation amazing because it allows you to resize your web pages, making them fully responsive with navigation bar. So there's a lot of information on Bootstrap, and this course is going to be covering building out a website from scratch using Bootstrap. So we're not going to incorporate all of the components of Bootstrap. So if you want to find out more about what Bootstrap has to offer, you can check that out at getbootstrap.com. And it's got a listing of all of the different components, layout, structure, content, utilities, and a whole lot more. And it's got a lot of great examples as well, themes, and just overall information about Bootstrap. As well, within this course, we're going to be using Bootstrap 4. So currently Bootstrap 4 is in beta version, and this is the latest and most current version of Bootstrap. So we're not expecting a whole lot more changes in version 4, and this is the one that we're going to be using. And if you are looking at this course, and if you're using Bootstrap 3, or if now there's a later version of Bootstrap, when you're looking at this course, then please keep in mind that there are changes, much like any other application. If they updated, there are different versions, and you need to use the same library that I'm using in order to apply all of the same classes that I'm going to be using within the course. But hopefully there's not a lot of changes, and with Bootstrap 4 there was some really nice improvements. So I'm going to be highlighting those within this course as well. So when you're ready, next lesson we're going to jump right in. So I suggest getting an editor, opening up that editor, and following along with the lessons. I'm also going to be providing the source code throughout the course in order for you to be able to quickly get started with Bootstrap. So when you're ready, let's get started creating a website from scratch using Bootstrap. In this lesson, we're going to start creating our Bootstrap website. And we've created a blank index page. And the next thing that we need to do is add some HTML code. And we also need to link the Bootstrap libraries. So we're going to go over to the Bootstrap website that's available at getbootstrap.com. And they have under Get Started, so if you click that Get Started button, they actually have a template here that's ready to go, and they've got CDN libraries linked already within the template, so it's going to be really easy just to copy and paste and get that starter template going in order to start writing out your Bootstrap. So there we go. So we've got our jQuery there, we've got our Bootstrap JS file, and with Bootstrap 4, there's a dependency on Popper JS. So this is for some of the pop-ups and tooltips in Bootstrap. So it's going to require that Popper library. And if you want to make full use of Bootstrap, then you do need to include that as well. And of course, if you're not using any of the JavaScript components in Bootstrap, you don't actually need to include any of the script tags here and the script libraries. So you can skip those as well. And the only file that you absolutely need within Bootstrap is the Bootstrap library. And this is a CSS library because Bootstrap is mainly based around CSS. And then of course it's got its jQuery, which is a JavaScript library. So it's got its jQuery components as well within that JavaScript file there. So let's just simply go over to this and grab that entire template. And you can use this as a template, or also I suggest that you get your a template set up within your computer so that you can really easily grab it at any point and make use of it within your projects. So all I'm doing is I'm simply copying and pasting that in, and I didn't get the doc type there, so let me grab that and add that in here at the top. So you will also notice that, so there's quite a lot of attributes here. So it's got integrity, cross-origin, and if you download Bootstrap, you can simply remove all of this stuff and you don't have to worry about the cross-origin. So these are attributes in order to properly use the CDN that's provided within Bootstrap. They also have a bunch of commenting here, so you don't need that. So you can remove all of that out and just clean up that template. We're also going to remove out that first hello world. We keep the JavaScript at the bottom because, of course, this is jQuery, and with jQuery, we interact with the content that's loaded within the web page. So that's known as the DOM, the document object model. So whenever you build out an HTML page and the browser actually renders it out, what it does is it builds a document structure of all of the elements, and then this is interacted with jQuery. And that's why we keep the JavaScript files at the end, because we want to make sure that that whole document object gets loaded in and before we try to access it and use it. So that's it. So that's the first step, and you can use the CDNs or you can go ahead and download Bootstrap. And what I want you to do now is to open up your editor and bring Bootstrap into your project. And you can tell that Bootstrap is working. So usually what I like to do is I'll do one of the Bootstrap classes. So it's got the H1. So this is a heading class, or we'll just call it, we'll just type out Bootstrap here, Bootstrap 4. So this is basically that file. Let me refresh it, and we see that it is working. So it's not coming in at the regular size because we do have the Bootstrap classes all functioning and operating. So that's what's making it bigger. So that's it. So that's all you need to do in order to hook Bootstrap into your web project. And we're all ready to go with the next lesson. We're going to start building out more of the structure of our website and start building out some of that styling that's involved within the website. So all of that is coming up in the next lesson. In this lesson, I want to do a quick sketch of what we want our website to look like. So typically for a website, we're going to use a default 4-page website. So we're going to have home, we're going to have about, services, and contact. And we did want to do a little quick sketch of what we want this website to look like. So mind you, this is going to be really rough. I'm using an application. So this is an online application called Draw.io, and basically it allows you to really quickly do a quick wireframe of what you want your website to look like. So maybe we'll do that and we'll make that one blue. So this will be our basic top bar there. We can apply it. We can also update some colors if we want as well. So I'm going to just use some of the default Bootstrap colors. So I'm going to make this as a primary color. So with Bootstrap, there's a number of default colors. And so there's primary, success, warning, and primary is blue. So I'm just going to have that to illustrate that it's blue. Next thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to have an image here across the bottom. So I'm just looking at a really good identifier for an image, and maybe what we'll do is we're just going to simply drag another box here. So the way that I want this website to work is I want to include an image here. So this part here, this will be all image, and we're not going to have it rounded. So that's going to be just coming in there, and we're going to have a fairly large image. It's going to be covering that whole available width there. So this is where our image is going to go. Next, we're going to add in some text. So we're going to add in maybe a heading, some heading information. So each page will have this H1 heading info, and this is basically about what is going to be contained within the page. And then within here is where we're going to just have some basic content. So I'm going to use another rectangle, and yeah, this is really, really rough. So I just want to get a rough idea and outline what we need and what we need where. And then at the bottom, let's add in a footer. So we're going to make the footer dark. So that's going to go across the bottom there. And let's make it fairly dark. So we're going to use just the Bootstrap defaults again. So that's going to be a dark color, and then maybe we're going to have some links out to our social media as well as some copyright information about our web page. So basically this is the rough layout of our website, and then of course the content in here is going to vary depending on the website, but the rest of this is going to be contained within the master. And then of course I wanted to also add in our navigation up here. So this navigation is, so we get rid of the fill there, and we're going to change the text to be white so that it stands out. So do white text. So basically, as said, we're going to have home, we're going to have about. So these are all going to be links, navigation links, and this is also going to be our collapsible menu. So let's just drag that out. And again, it is really, really rough. So we're going to have it here on the right-hand side, and we can also maybe add in our company name here. So this will just have our company name and information here on the left-hand side. So that's it. So that's basically, we can get rid of that line around there. So this is basically what we're going to try to build out. And again, we're going to probably be going back here to sketch out what our homepage is going to look like, our about page, services, and contact. But the first thing that I usually like to do is build out my basic page structure. So that's going to include the navigation bar. That's going to include this heading information over here. It's going to leave this content section, which is going to be open. It's also going to include that heading information here, because all of this stuff we're including on every page, and then as well as the footer contents. So we're going to build all of this first and as a master template, and then we're going to build out those pages separately once we've built out that master template, because we do have the same content across multiple pages. So now that we've set this up, what I usually like to do is set up placeholders for all the different content. So we know that in the beginning we need our navigation bar. So just as in our illustration, we've got our navigation bar. The next thing that we have is a header. So this is going to be our page header. It's going to include all of that image page header. So we're going to have our navigation bar is going to sit on top of this. And let me just type in comments here for the navigation bar. So this is going to be a responsive nav bar as well. There's our header. And the next thing that we need is we need another container. So this is going to be our container for main content. That's where all of our main content is going to go. And I'm going to create a div there to hold that. So this is going to be a div, and we'll give it a class of container. So this is a Bootstrap class. And with Bootstrap, so you have two options for containers. You can have a fluid, or you can just use regular container. The fluid one does full width across. Container one is limited sizing, and when you shrink it down, then it takes full width. So that's the difference, and those are your two options for Bootstrap. And then last but not least, we need to have our footer. And this is where our footer content will go. So we can have our social media links, copyright, and whatever else we want to put down there. So that's what's going to go down there in the footer. And maybe for the footer, we're just going to do footer. So opening and closing footer. So that's it. So even if we go to the page right now, there's really not a whole lot to see, because this was just an exercise in building out that structure and conceptualizing what we want our website to look like. So the next step is going to be to start building out the rest of the structure, and we're going to start out with the navigation bar. So this is crucial for any website, and as mentioned, Bootstrap does this really, really well. So let's build out our navigation bar. We also want to fix the navigation bar to the top, so we don't want to be able to scroll down. I want this fixed at the top, and that's something else that Bootstrap does, and just simply by adding in a class. So I'll show you all of that coming up in the next lesson. In this lesson, we're going to start by building out our navigation bar. So I'm going to do a half and half here so we can see our navigation bar and what all the classes are actually going to do as we build it out within our page. So we've already created a basic placeholder for our navigation bar, and within this navigation bar, we need to add in some divs. And with Bootstrap, there's quite a lot of divs because we need some type of elements in order to contain all the different classes that we're going to be using. So let's just use a container. So the same thing that we're using down there, and again, this container allows us to have a little bit more structure within our HTML, and we can get rid of that spacing there because this container is just going to be sitting within the div, providing more structure. So the next thing that I want to do is add a button. So this is type button, and we're going to transform it with the Bootstrap classes afterwards and Bootstrap attributes. So I'm going to just leave some placeholders here for that Bootstrap. And we're going to also create a span here, so class. And this is, again, we're just going to leave that blank for now. And this is actually where that hamburger icon is going to go. So when you collapse your page, this is what's going to be showing there. Next thing that we want to do, we want to also add in our navigation list. So I'm going to wrap this within another div. And the reason that I'm doing it this way is that this is where all my collapsed content is going to go. So the button is going to be the only thing that's going to be showing whenever we collapse. And this is where we get that responsive layout that we can build out using Bootstrap. So I'm going to give it an ID because we do need to identify the collapsed content. And so anything in here is not going to show, and it's going to be in that collapsed mode. That's only going to show whenever we shrink down the page. So we want to place that into an ordered list. And again, I'm going to just leave these classes as placeholders. And then we know that each one of these can be a list item. And within each one of these list items, we need to have an href, a hyperlink, in order to link out to wherever we want this link to go. So for now, we're just going to set it to go to index. So this is going to be our home page. And of course, we also need a Bootstrap class for here. And also a Bootstrap class for here for the list items. So there we go. So now we've set up the basic structure, and really it doesn't look like a whole lot because of course we haven't added in our Bootstrap class. So this is where all of the magic happens with Bootstrap. Once you start adding in these classes, it really begins to take shape. So in the next lesson, we're going to be adding in the classes in Bootstrap in order to build out our navigation menu. So that's coming up in the next lesson. In this lesson, we're going to transform our nav bar that we started building out in the last lesson, and we're going to add in Bootstrap classes. So the first thing that we need to do is identify it as a nav bar. So the main container is a nav bar, and we see that it immediately moves it over and starts structuring it as a navigation bar. And we also want to add in some colors. So let's set it up as nav bar dark, and we need to... So let's refresh that. And also let's add a background color, so background primary. So we want to use some of the default Bootstrap colors. So there we go. So we've got our Bootstrap navigation bar is dark, and we've got our primary color there. And the next thing that we want to add, so I noticed that within our original example, so we had our company information. So I'm going to just simply add that in here. So this is our company. So this is also where we can add in some branding. So let's identify it as such within Bootstrap, and we're going to add a class, so navbar brand. And this is how Bootstrap can tell that this is what we're trying to do with this particular element, is we want to classify it as navbar brand. So even when it shrinks down, we're still going to be able to see that. So next thing that we want to do is build out our button. So this is our icon, our toggle button, and this is going to give us the ability to toggle whenever we shrink down. So first of all, let's first add in our navbar toggler. So within Bootstrap 4, they included the navbar toggler icon, And we see that this is the basic icon here, what we toggle, and that we're going to be able to see whenever we shrink the page down. So the idea here is to make it responsive, and we want this to be hidden until we hide our collapsed content, which was going down here. So let's build out the rest of the classes, and this button actually needs quite a few attributes in order to get it working properly. So navbar toggler is the class that we identify it as, and we already have it as type of button, and this in itself, now it's going to be looking for some attributes. So data toggle is the attribute name, and collapse is going to be the action that we want to happen with that. Let's also do data target, because we need to identify where on our HTML page we're targeting this collapse button to be connected to. And remember that with IDs, we need to include the hash. So if we included a class, we would do the dot for the class. And if we're just doing a tag name, we could do that as well. So this is the same type of syntax that you've familiar with whenever you're using CSS. So it'd be the same type of idea. So the next thing that we want to do, so really, if we go out here and we refresh it, we don't actually see a whole lot. So we do see that this toggler is kind of working, it's hiding this, and it's toggling it. So there is some functionality already, but we're not completed yet on what we're doing with Bootstrap. So let's finish off and let's add in some additional classes. So this class is collapse. So remember, this is all the collapsed content. And so we're adding in the class collapse and navbar collapse so that Bootstrap knows that this particular content is that collapsed content. So we see that, there we go. So that's all we really needed to do in order to make it collapsible and not. So we've got that functionality. If we want the navigation bar to show back up, which we do because we still want to add in some content, the new responsive navigation bars, so these are breakpoint set. So we can set it on large, we can set it on medium, we can set it on small. And basically what this does is this keeps the menu, and when we shrink it down, then we get that shrunken responsive menu that you see on mobile devices. So that's working properly, and we still need to add in some additional classes here for the unordered list and the list items. So this one is the actual navbar nav. So let's refresh that. So there's that one, and we need to add in some classes here as well for the list items. So all of the list items now are nav items, and within for the links, we've got a separate class for links, and that's nav links. So when I apply that, we see that now we are able to see it because we've set it as navbar dark, so we know the background color is dark, so the text has to be light. If we flip it around and if we do navbar light, let me show you what the difference there is, we see that the text will go dark. So depending on what your background is, you can flip the text from light to dark, and Bootstrap actually handles all of this within the navigation bar, which is really cool and really great for web developers. So the next thing is to finish this up and to add in the different list items. So what I want you to do now, pause the video, open up your editor, and open up that template that you created earlier. And if you don't have a template, you can go over to Bootstrap and grab the template, link out those CDNs, make sure that you've got that Bootstrap file linked so you can access the Bootstrap content, and then build out the navigation bar. So same as what we've done, and finish this up, adding in all of the list items that are relevant for the web page that you're building. So in this course, I'm going to be building out home, about, services, and contact. So those are the pages that I'm going to be adding, but yours might be different. So this is going to be for a 4-page website. And if you do need to add additional pages, you can really easily do that as well, copying that same format using the same templates that we're going to be developing in the upcoming lessons. So go ahead and build that out, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to finish this lesson off by adding in all of the different list items that I wanted to include within this project. So next one is list item, and this is going to be about. So this is going to link out to the about section. And this is a lot of just copy and paste at this point because we already have what we want it to look like. So now it's just a matter of copy, paste. I'm going to beautify this. So that's a feature within brackets where you can realign all of your content. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here to read. And the other link that we want to do is services. So maybe this could be a typical website for a business where we've got some about information, we've got some services that we offer, and that's what we want to highlight on the website. So the purpose of the site is really to inform people and highlight what our business has to offer. And if we do have a business, most websites, you should include a way to contact you. And especially if it's an information site, then definitely don't forget to include that contact page. So that's it. So we're all ready to go. So let's go back out to our main website and refresh it here. So this is the same page. And so we've got everything is working properly. So we've got all of our navigation bar. And I actually want to move this navigation bar. I want to pull it over to the right-hand side. So I'm going to add in a class in order to do that as well. And we can set margins. So with Bootstrap 4, there's a new way to pull content over to the left or to the right. And this is setting up those margins. So I'm going to do margin left auto. So basically it's going to margin left and it's going to auto the right-hand side. So what this is going to do is pull it over to the right-hand side. So we're adding in our auto left margin here, full space, all that's available space, and effectively pulling it over to the right-hand side. So again, depending on how you want to design your website, you don't have to add that. All that does is just move it over. And this is as well, this is new with Bootstrap 4 beta as well. This is the new way of moving things over and pulling it to the right or pulling it to the left. So go ahead and build out that navigation bar, because in the next lesson, we're going to continue to build out our page master template, and then we're going to start adding in the different content for the individual pages. And all of this is coming up. Welcome back. And in the previous lesson, we built out our navigation bar, and this is our first set that we looked at in order to build out what we had originally designed when we started the course. So we've got our navigation bar done, and the next step was to create a header area, and this is where we're going to have a background image. So let's set that up now, and we're going to set up a background image that's going to sit in the background of this particular header area. So let's open up our editor, and we already have our placeholder all ready to go. So that's our head there. And within here, we're going to add container. So this is going to be the default that we're going to be using for most of these sections, where we're going to set up the Bootstrap default container area. And then within the container is where we're going to hold all of our content. So it's usually a good idea, in order to keep things uniform, so that we have everything aligning properly, that we use that same structure whenever we're adding content within our web page. So the next thing that we need to do is let's do a really simple grid. So Bootstrap is all about grids, and grids are an excellent way to help lay out your content better using Bootstrap. So we're going to set up a row, because in order to So basically the grid works like this, that you've got a container. Within the container, you can have a row. You can have multiple rows if you want. Each row has, by default, the grid structure has the 12 columns. With Bootstrap 4, we've got some more options as well for columns. And we can center those columns as well. So if we don't have the offsets anymore with Bootstrap 4, so let me show you how we can center the column. So the first thing that I wanted to do is create our column, and we're going to do it on MD. So we're going to do column MD8 and close that off. And then within here, this is where we're going to have our content is sitting in here. So the first content that we're going to have, let's add in our heading here. So this will be a div class, and so we had a few options. We could do display as well. So let's do a display 1. So we have a really big heading here, and close that off. And this will be welcome to welcome. So just call it welcome page maybe. So remember, we have actually images that are going to be sitting underneath this. So this is just going to be sitting on top of the images that are going to be sitting underneath. Let's do another one here and do a class. So this one is going to be maybe like a subheading, some muted text, and we'll do Bootstrap for website from scratch. So let's go back out and see what this looks like so far. So there's our welcome page, and notice that it's not centered. So we do want to center it. So in order to do that, we can do the MX auto. So let me show you what that does. And this works with the margins. So this automatically centers your content. So we've got our welcome page, and yeah, that is rather large. So let's shrink that down a bit. And that's the good thing about Bootstrap. It really makes it easy to kind of make adjustments. And if something is too large, you just increase or decrease the number. So this is all available within the classes of Bootstrap. And with Bootstrap, we also have some text utilities. So let's say, for instance, this one here, I want to do text, and let's change this to uppercase. So the class is text uppercase, and basically that will transform the text to be uppercase. And again, that made it a little bit too large, so let's change that over to 4. So we also have the ability to do bold. If we want, we can do italics. We can also change the colors. So we've got what's called text light. We can do muted format of the text as well. So this is kind of a grayed out version. So a number of different options for text that we can add in. And typically this class is something like text muted. So let me show you what text muted does. So this one is going to get muted now. So when I refresh it, it's kind of this grayed out, and it's not as colorful, not as dark in color as the one that's above it, as the rest of the text. So again, with the headings, we had different options. So we can go anywhere from display 1 to display 4 as well. And we could also use headings. So we have the H1 options as well. So this is pretty good for now because, as mentioned, we do want to have a background image. So let's set up some classes. And this is not going to be Bootstrap. So you also, with Bootstrap, sometimes you don't have all of the styles that you need, and this is where you need to add in those customized styles. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build the style here within this template, then I can create a style sheet and I'm going to link out to it. So usually with the style, start out with body, so we can add in some default body font styles if we want, so font family or font colors. So sometimes you'll see font family here, and maybe for now we'll just start out with this. And we can always update that later on as well. So next, we want to select this header. So this is going to be our main header image content. So let's create a custom class for that. Header. So we'll call it header main or something like that. So we know that this is our main header. So header main is the class. And now for here, let's add in some defaults here. So I want to have a background image. So we have an option here to do a different background image if we want. So let's set that up first. And in order to get a background image, we need to use one of the placeholder image sources. So a good one to use is placehold it. So basically this gives you the ability to get an image. And if you want something a little bit more colorful, there's always Lorem Pixel, and this one will actually give you real images, but I find when I'm developing, sometimes they're a little bit slow to load. So again, depending on what you want to do, you can set up this one, or you can use one of the default placeholder ones. So I'll just show you what the difference is. So let's set up that background So we're going to set a background image. And for the background image, we need to have a URL. And that URL is going to be this one here. And it's okay if it's small, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to set it as cover, so that it's actually going to cover that full available area. And this is all what we're doing. We're customizing within our Bootstrap, because Bootstrap, some of the things, as mentioned, it doesn't always have everything that you might need. So in this instance, let's set up background cover, background size cover. And when you are customizing the CSS, make sure that you have your style sheet after the Bootstrap sheet, so that you can even update some of the Bootstrap default classes as well. Let's set up the background positioning. So do a no repeat, because we're doing it as a cover. So cover will take up the full available width. Center. So before we go out, we actually have to move the image down to the bottom underneath where we're positioning it, so that the page actually knows where it's going to position. So it's got it centered there. And what we want to do, no repeat. So the order actually matters here. So let's do no repeat cover. So there we go. So now we've got our background image there. Let's update and add in a margin. We're going to add in a margin at the bottom. So let's do 75 pic margin at the bottom. Let's refresh that, see what that looks like. And also add in a background color. So margin bottom, background color. So in case our image doesn't show up, or in case we want to see the entire content there, so let's add in a background color. So that would be just a kind of a grayish color there. So the other thing that I want to add in as well is I wanted to add in some additional styling for the inner class here that's within this column. So let's give this one a name, and this is going to be just basically heading text. So this is customized, and because I want to add in some additional padding around this particular element, so that's why we need to identify it and select it. And let's also add in color. So we want to have white font, and let's do the padding. So the padding can be basically, we're going to have padding for the top and the bottom, and we're going to have no padding for the left and the right. So let's see what this looks like. So there we go. So now we can actually see the content a little bit better. And one other thing too is I want to add, let's refresh it so that we can get all of this in one basic area. So there we go. So now we've got our content. It's on top of the image, and it's what we had designed here within our original design. So ready to move on to the next step. So what I want you to do now is set this up within your own project as well. Go ahead and create this header section, and then do some customizing of some of the CSS that's available on the page, creating a style. And we're going to also copy this into a CSS file after we've completed our basic template. So go ahead and build this out, create some heading text there, and then some text underneath it, so some subtext underneath it. And then you can also adjust this as needed. So you can make it smaller, you can make it larger, and the MX Auto is the Bootstrap class that will center that content and apply automatic margins to both sides. So in the next lesson, we're going to continue to build out our basic template and go ahead and build out the rest of the page structure. So mainly just the footer part of the content. So all of that is coming up. Welcome back. And in this lesson, we're going to focus on the footer area. And before we do that, within the top container here, I wanted to add in a section for page headings. So this will be our H1 for the page, and we're going to add in a class as well to it. So we're going to set up a Bootstrap class. So this is the page heading area. So because I want every page to be the same, so we're going to have our page heading, and then underneath it we can have maybe some small text. So more about this page. So it gives us an option here to add in additional information that's contained within the page. And then the rest of it can be customized. We can have a grid, and more than likely we're going to be setting up grids for a number of the pages. But this is all we really need in order to set up our main page area. So we've got our page heading there, more about this page, and then all of that content will go below that. So next we need to set up our footer. And for the footer, so this is typically where some copyright information, and we did say social media links as well. So let's set up this part of our page. So again, we're going to use that div class container. It's the same one that we've used before. So this is so that they all fall in line, and that's why we're using them, because each one of these sections, we want the sides to be evened out. So we do want it to fall in line. We also have some options. So with Bootstrap, just as with the navigation menu, we can do background dark. So what this does is, if I go back out to the page and refresh it, it's going to make dark background, but I don't have any content in here yet. So we're not able to see that quite yet. Let's build out a grid here. So we're going to have our class. Remember, we start out with container to build a grid. Next one is row. So that's the next level. And then the last level is another div or another element. And then this one is where we have our basic columns. So do column, and maybe we want to do column MD8. So we're going to do it the same as we did the one up here. And we also want to center that column. So we no longer have to offset it by 2 if we want to get to the full 12. We can just use the automatic centering of the margins. That's new with Bootstrap 4. So there we go. So now we've got our spot in order to add in our social media icons. And if we also have some content here, so if we want to have our copyright content, so we can have that within the paragraph as well. So let's do class, and we'll do that same muted text. So that's actually text muted, so that it kind of grays it out a little bit. And so this is copyright, and we'll just use the and copy your own website 2017. So let's see how this looks. Go back out, refresh it. So there's our copyright, your own website. We need to center this text, and with Bootstrap centering, so it's got an option, text center. So now when we go back out, that text should be centered. Need to save that. And let's actually move this into the column. So do it like that, so that we've got actually some width to our container. So now when we center it, we see that our text is centered. And now we can add in some links, some website links, or social media links, and whatever we want down here as well. So let's go ahead and add those in. And Bootstrap has a way to create lists, and we can change those to inline by using the list. So that's list inline class. And what that will do is that will change all of the list items to be inline. So they're not going to be horizontal, but they're going to be vertically stacked. And we just need to identify those list items with, again, the Bootstrap class. So with Bootstrap 4 now, there's more options for lists and more you can do with lists. And this is one that we can do as inline. So maybe if we want to link out to Facebook, and maybe you've got a YouTube profile, and also let's do a Twitter profile. So there we go. So now we're linking out to those. Those should be listed out. So we see them getting listed out there, and they're not exactly, we need to also center them as well. So let's take care of centering it. So text centered. Add that class in. So we'll center them, and we want to actually transform these into icons. So we don't want to have them just as regular hyperlinks. We want to have them actually as icons. So let's actually update them as hyperlinks. So href, and then we're going to transform them as icons coming up as well. So I'll show you how to do that. So there's our first one there, and I'm going to just do some quick copy and pasting there and copying it out. So I'm not actually going to link out to anything. I'm just going to use that hash as a placeholder for linking. So there we go. So we've got our social media there, but it's always better to use icons because they're more recognizable as well. So in order to use icons for your content, we're going to use Font Awesome. I'll show you to bring that library into your project in the upcoming lesson. So what I want you to do now is update your current web page, set up that main content container, and then at the bottom, set up the footer and set up some copyright information. In the next lesson, I'll show you how to update these to be icons instead of just regular text links. So that's all coming up in the next lesson. In the previous lesson, we built out our footer and we just used text. So there is a better way, and with Bootstrap, they actually got rid of all of their glyphs within the newer version, but that's okay because we always have Font Awesome. And Font Awesome is a great place to get fonts and make use of them within your web projects. So this is all open, free to use, and you can see that there's a whole ton of different icons here that you could simply grab and bring into your project. So a lot of really useful stuff. And of course, we do have all of the social media ones. So somewhere within here, we do have the social media. So we know that there's quite a lot of brand icons. So let's just do a quick search and we'll do YouTube. So there's the YouTube one. And we see we've got a number of different sizes. So let's just grab YouTube and go back out to our page here, and we'll just do it like that. So we actually need to bring in a library. So just as we brought in Bootstrap, we can bring in the Font Awesome library, and luckily we can even download it, or we could bring it in as a CDN. So the CDN is usually the quickest way to go, but of course you can download it as well. So this is the same thing for Bootstrap, and this is really super useful to use within your projects. And I just realized that the style is outside of the head section. So let me update that and fix that as well. So let's clean that up, save it, and go out to our web page project, and let's see what it looks like. So there we go. So we've got our YouTube icon. So the other one that we wanted to grab is we've got Twitter. So let's just search because there are way too many. So let's do, we did the YouTube, the regular one. We could do the YouTube square as well if we wanted to. So there are a few different options. Bring in Twitter instead of writing out Twitter there. And then last but not least, let's grab Facebook as well. So Facebook. And this is all depending on which ones you want to use. And if you've got some other links that you want, this is a really cool way to present them within your projects as well. Let's also update the text. We'll change the text to be light within this container. And now let's go back out and see what that looks like. So there we go. So we've got our icons. And to make them light, it's actually, let's grab that and we're going to put it in each individual element. So let's go back out, refresh the page, and this way we can see that we've transformed them and they're all white. So again, depending on what you're trying to do, you can transform them into dark or light, and that's how you bring Font Awesome into your projects. And also looking at this footer, so let's do a little bit of bug fixing here. So let's change this to container fluid. So this way it'll go all the way across. Let's go back, refresh the page, and this way our footer is all the way across. Another thing that we might want to add is we want our navigation bar to stay at the top. So that's also really easy to do with Bootstrap, where we can set that as fixed top. So let's go back up to the navigation bar and let's update that to fixed top. So now we're not going to be able to scroll down. That navigation bar will always be sitting there at the top. So there we go. So we can see that the navigation bar is static and it's fixed at the top. Let's also add in a page title here. And we'll give it Bootstrap for website home. So basically, always give it a couple glances over, just make sure that everything looks correct. And I think at this point, we're ready to build out the pages. So we've got our basic template set up. So the next step really is to create a style sheet and then link to that. So I'm just going to create a brand new style sheet here, and I'm going to just call it style.css, and then go back to my index page. And I can simply just link out to that. And then this way, we only need that one style sheet, and we can make updates to it wherever we want within our project. So style sheet, and then we need to provide the location. So style sheet is on the same directory here as we're located. Do one quick check just to make sure that everything is still proper, and we're ready to go. In the next lesson, we can actually start building out some of the pages. So that's coming up in the next lesson. And what I want you to do now is finish off your footer, bring in Font Awesome, take a look through Font Awesome, check out all the different really cool icons, and make use of them within your own website project. And then also update that styling to link to the style sheet, and you're ready to go to move on to the next step where we're actually going to start building out the pages. And you can actually rename this one as well. You can call it template or something like that, so it's not actually interfering with the index page. So go ahead and do that, and next lesson we're going to build out our home page. Welcome back, and in this lesson we're going to be building out our index page. So the first thing that I want to do is go back over to our diagram. So this is our main index page. So we know that we've got a space here for content. We've done the footer. We've done the image here. We've done the navigation bar. We've got the heading information here. So we're all ready to go. And again, this is really rough. So let's create another diagram. So this is just for that content that's going to go in here. And we'll create that for each one of the pages. So I'm going to go ahead and save this one as template, and let's create a brand new one. So blank diagram, and you can use any drawing application you want. So I'm just using Draw.io because it's really easy and convenient. But again, you can draw this out any way you want. You can even draw it on a napkin with a pen and paper. It doesn't matter, just as long as you have some way, some basic guideline that you're working off of in order to design the website. So the first part of that section, so this is the home page, and I want to create a Jumbotron, add in some text here. So maybe this will say hello world or something like that. The text should be a darker color, so let's update the color of the text and make it a little bit bigger. And again, update that color. Not sure why it didn't update that time. Apply. So again, it doesn't really matter. So what I wanted to do is I want to turn this into a Jumbotron. Maybe we have a button here. So maybe this is a call to action or something like that. So this is our button. So let's give it some color there. And this will be like a click me button or something like that. Click or something there. And then we'll also have just some regular text here and add that in as well. So underneath the hello world, we'll add in some text. So we can actually get rid of that. Hello world, and we'll have some text. We'll have a call to action, and we'll use the Bootstrap Jumbotron in order to display this content. So that's basically the top part. And in the bottom part, let's create a grid. So within the grid, we'll have a basic top content section here. So this will be some content, and of course, this can be whatever we want. Maybe we'll have an image over here. So this will be just the default image, or maybe what we can do is we can move it over this way. So just align that up. So this is just a placeholder for an image, and let's do a few more of these images. So just copy and I'll paste them down. So I don't use this program an awful lot, so I'm just using it really for the purposes of this course. So there's probably a better way to do this, or I just saw a duplicate, so I could do a duplicate of it. So maybe I'm going to have the heading there, and then I'll have a bunch of images here down below. So this will be a really visual introductory page. Now that we've planned this out, we've done a quick sketch of what we want the home page to look like. I'm going to save it as home. So this is our home page. And now we're ready to start building it. So next lesson, let's jump back into our editor and build this out. And again, remember, we're going to try to use as much Bootstrap as possible. So this is going to be the Jumbotron. This is going to be a Bootstrap button. This is going to be responsive image. This is going to be the grid with some additional images. And of course, you can plan out and you can design your website as you need, representing the content that you need. And that's the whole idea of creating that initial design. You have in mind what content you want to present and where you want to present it, which page you want to present it. So the home page is a great place to create that call to action, that introduction to people that might be just casually browsing, come across your website, and they can really get really into the content of your website. And usually adding images is a great way to do that, because that's really user friendly and it tells a story really quickly, and usually it creates even more engagement for users instead of just having a bunch of text. So images is a great way to capture those users as they're coming into your web pages. So keep that in mind when you are designing your websites. So we have a plan and a rough sketch from our previous lesson, and we're ready to go to open up our editor and start building that out. So we're going to start with the index page, and I already created it. I saved our template as a file called temp. So you can see that within my directory here that I do have template there. So I'm going to work off of index. When I'm ready to move on to about, I'm going to open up template, save it as about, make the changes in there. So that's one of the ways that you can create multiple pages using all of this master content, where you're just simply updating that content that's contained within that container area. So let's create that content now. So the first thing that we wanted to do, according to the plan, is add a Jumbotron. And Jumbotron is fun to say, and it's also a really effective way to capture users. So it's a great thing to use on an index page where somebody might be casually coming to your web page content. So within the Jumbotron, we have an option. We can display some additional content. So let's create a div, and we'll give it a class. So this one is going to be display 3. So how about we'll try that size. And for now, let's just say hello world, because we don't really have a great message. And of course, if you were building this out in the real world, you'd make sure that every piece of content made sense and it had a purpose within your website. So this is Jumbotron example within Bootstrap 4. So there we've got a little bit of content there. And then last but not least, we want to have our call to action. So we're going to do this as a hyperlink. And with Bootstrap, we know we can transform different elements into different looking elements. So we know that if we want to transform a hyperlink into a button, this is going to be really easy to do, where we just simply add in the class, the BTN class, and basically that makes it look like a button. So learn more, and we'll close that off. So let's pop open, and we're going to see what this looks like. So there's our basic introductory page, and notice that the Jumbotron is sitting outside of the container area. So this basically means we need to have another container here within the Jumbotron, because the Jumbotron by default is trying to take up more space than we want to allocate to it. So that's why it's sticking out of that area. So we need to have it more controlled. We need to bring it back into our main container area. And the other thing too, I just noticed that we don't have that div there at the end, and that's probably why it's hanging over. So there we go. So now we've got our Jumbotron, we've got our page heading, and next we want it to add in some content here. So we want to have an image, And basically what this is basic grid here. So we've got, when we look at 12 columns, so we've got 4, we've got 8, 4, 4, and 4. So we can build out our grid as well down here. So we've got the container ready to go. Let's do another container here, because this part is going to be with the grid. Let's clean that up a bit. So within here, this is where we're going to build out our basic grid structure. And we can work on a span of 4. So let's do div and class. And so what do we need first when we're starting out our grid? We need a row. So we need to define that row. And then next, we're ready to set up the column classes. So let's start out by call MD and 4, because we want it to go 4 across. And then within here is where we're going to place an image. So we need an image source, and we're just going to simply use the placeholder. So placeholder.com, and we're going to make this image fluid, so it actually doesn't matter what size the image is. So we'll just set it at a default size, and we're going to use the Bootstrap IMG fluid in order to make the image responsive size. So there we go. So we've got our first area there, and then the second area, so this is going to be 8. So it's going to take up all 8 columns, the remaining 8 columns. And here is where we need some text information. So again, we have an option. We can have a span, and we can do a class, and we can set the size. So let's do H3 maybe, and welcome to my website. And we'll just, you can put in whatever text you want in there. So like that, and let's use HR, and then next let's do a paragraph there. So this can be some lorem ipsum default text, and maybe we're just going to copy it so it looks like there's more information here. So let's go take a look and see what our website looks like now. So there we've got our text area. So we've got our home text area with the image, responsive image. And then lastly, we wanted to add another row at the bottom. And this one is just going to have a bunch of images in here. So let's set that up, clean that up a little bit, grab this, and we can just copy and paste because we've just got the 4 images. So I'm going to just clean that up again, go back out and refresh it. So there we go. So there we've got our 3 images. So all of this is sitting within the Jumbotron, and maybe let's take it out of that Jumbotron, as I just wanted the Jumbotron within that section there. So that's why we've got that kind of grayish area there. So let's distinguish it from the Jumbotron. And just looking at this, we probably need to add some padding there at the bottom. So we can do that with Bootstrap as well. So we can add in margins now with Bootstrap. So we can do something like margin bottom, and then we can set a numeric value. So let's try that out. Let's do MD3. So hopefully that adds in a little bit of a margin there at the bottom. And you can really play around with this. This is new with Bootstrap 4 as well, that we have the ability to add margins. So what I've done here is I've done margin bottom. If I wanted a margin at the top, I could do MT, and that would essentially give us a margin at the top, but I do want it at the bottom. So those are the options there. You can go margin top, margin bottom, margin left, margin right. And you've also got classes set for both, and the sizes range anywhere from 0 to 5. So you can also, besides margins, you can do padding as well. So there's a lot of information that's contained within for Bootstrap for that specifically. And there's more information available at the Bootstrap website about this. So if you want to go to Bootstrap spacing, it's got all of that margin information there. So that's all I was doing there, where I was setting those margins at the bottom. So I'm going to just refresh it, and there's our margins at the bottom. So basically, that's the home page. So we're ready to go with the next part of this, and I'm actually just going to do a quick update, and I'm going to update that image. So I won't. I'm going to use lorem pixel for that images. And what I want it to do, so I want to have different images actually for each main container. So probably the best way to do that is I can add it here as style, and then I can grab that class there where I've got that image, so the header main, and then add in background image. So we're going to overwrite that one that's initially there, and we're going to simply put that URL. So like that. So that way, when we go out to the page, and this way we can have different images and URLs, and you've got some options here. So if we want to do business, I can /business, so I can get a more business-like picture. So maybe that would work better. And sometimes you do have to play around, and that's one of the downsides about lorem pixel is you don't actually have a choice of the images that are showing up. They just come in at random. So there we go. So that we've got some background images, and probably best even to make this larger. So this is an option with lorem pixel where you can actually resize your images. So that will make it a little bit more crisp and clear. So there we go. So we're ready to move on. And the other thing that I've just noticed here as well is that I don't have, I can't really see this text here. So maybe a good idea might be to add a light background to it, or because the text is light, maybe add a dark background. So let's do background dark, and we're going to add that in. So that's one of the things that we don't have initially within our text. So let's see what that looks like. So refresh. So we've got our home page there, and we can also add it here as well. So let's add it down there. So there we go. So now we can actually see that, that message that we had above the image. So go ahead and take what you've learned within this lesson, build out your home page, and the next lesson we're going to be jumping into the About page. So that's coming up. So now that we've completed the home page, we're going to move on to the About page. And I did make that update to have that dark part within that template file that I have. So this is reflected, and this is what we found within the index. So we do want to make everything the same within the template as if we make any changes. So make sure that if you do make some updates that you update it in the template before you save the About. Otherwise, you'd have to go through each page and just simply draw out that content that's contained within the container as well. So that's the other option if you do want to get everything consistent again. And usually that's a good idea to keep all of your page content consistent. So now we're ready with the template, and I'm going to save it as about.html. So now we've got a fresh page to start working on. And again, we're going to look at this container area, About Me page. And this is going to have information about us and more. So there we go. So we're ready to take a closer look at that About page. We don't have a whole lot of information here, so we need to also maybe update that welcome page, and we'll just call it About Us. So About Us. So we've got our home page, we've got the About Us, and we also maybe need a specific image for that as well. So let's grab an image right off the bat. Let's update that. So same thing that we did within there, maybe we could also work this into the template as well. So the reason that I'm changing it, I could do it within the style sheet. So that was the other option that I have. I could update it and do it within the style sheet, and then I'd have to give them each separate different IDs or a way to distinguish them within the new pages. So that would be the other option instead of having it within the page style attributes, page style tags here. So let's go back out to here, and let's see what other options. So we have cats. We've got sports, food, city. So let's do city for this one. So the next thing that we want to do, just as we planned out our homepage, we want to plan out, and let's save this as about, or actually let's start a brand new page. We're just going to do new, and we're just going to call it about. So it's going to build out a brand new page, and let's plan out what this about page is going to look like. So coming in, maybe we're going to have a nice big image here on the left-hand side here. Again, nice big, actually I think I need the rectangle. So we'll have an image here. So this will be our image. We'll have a bunch of text here on the right-hand side, or maybe this time we can flip it around. So we'll do the image here on the right-hand side and our text on the left. So maybe some information about what's happening, what we do, and then also let's add in some visuals here. So we'll do several different images. And I know they're not always spaced out the best. So let's just add in those images. So these are all going to be the same size, even though in my diagram here, I don't want to spend too much time on fine-tuning this. But basically, what I want to do is have the four different columns there. So 3 columns wide each, and have some images and maybe some information underneath. So let's just set that up. So this is going to be a really plain page and basically telling us about us. So it's the About Us page. So that's it. And now let's build that out. In the next lesson, we're going to build this out within our editor. So that's coming up. The previous lesson, we planned out our About page, we used the template, we copied it, and we're ready to go building out our About page. We've added in another default image there. So now whenever we go over to the page itself, and we'll refresh it here. So we've got the About, and we can see that it really nice and neatly resizes as well. So we've got that responsive by default within Bootstrap. So we already updated some of this main container area. We've got About Us, Bootstrap from scratch. And now let's build this out and let's add in that image. So we want to have an image here as well as some text. And again, this is going back out into the grid, and we can really easily build this within the grid format. So we already have the container. We already have, actually we should be looking down here. So we have the main container. And then within here, so we have an option, we can do another container. So let's just do class container, because we're going to use the grid below. So the first thing what we do with the grid, we start out with a container, and then what's the next step with the grid? We set up a row. So there we go, we've got our row. And then lastly, we need to set up a column. So let's do a column, and this one's going to be MD8. So let's quickly go back and just make sure that this is aligning actually with our page design. So we actually need to have this one probably be a different size, because this is where all the text content is going to go. So ideally with the text, so we'll set up that text content, and the next one is this is where the image is going to sit. So let's move that back down. And let's set up that text content. So we can do it a number of different ways. We can keep it similar to inline. So let's do a really simple one. We'll just do H3. And this is our story. And then below that, we're going to have our content. So it all began here, and then this happened. And we can just simply type in even more content. So this can basically serve as our content area, and then maybe we've got a few paragraphs. We'd obviously have different text there, but for the purposes of creating this website, we're just going to simply copy and paste that out. So the next thing, and another thing that we might want to add in as well, we might want to have another row, or we might want to have another list of content. So we saw how we can use unordered lists, and then we can have list items. So there's a few options there where we can present content really nice and neatly. So let's do that component. We're going to create essentially maybe a list group. So we can set this one up, and this will be class list group. And this can also be utilized to highlight some specific information. So list group item, that's how you identify that item first, and we can go all the way down. We can have second, and we can have any number of list items as well. So putting in whatever random content we want to place in there. So I'm just going to keep consistent here. Third, fourth, and then fifth. And I'm just going to clean it up. And let's go take a look at the page, see what it looks like within our browser. So when I refresh it, I get rid of this stuff here at the bottom. So there we go. We've got our information. And next, let's set up our image. So we can use what we did before, where we can set up that image, and we're going to set this up as a responsive image. So image fluid is the class. And then we also need a source for the image. So let's use that placeholder it again. And let's make this one 750 by 400. So go back out, take a look at it, just see if it looks right. So we've dropped it down there, and we need to see what happened here. So we've got our row here, we've got our column MD3, MD5, and the problem is here that I've got a little bit of an error here, that I'm not actually calling the right classes. So that's what was happening there. So let's refresh that and see what it looks like. So there we go. So we've got our story, we've got an image, and sometimes it does take a little bit of playing around, because immediately we notice that this one maybe should be represented underneath, or maybe we can represent this stuff up here and then move our story underneath. So it doesn't really fit well. So let's do that then. Let's grab this part out. We'll leave the list group, and we're going to do another separate row and have that content sitting within that row. So div class, and we'll just call it column. So let's see what this looks like now. So there we go. So it looks a little bit better. And we also might want to add in a margin at the top. So to remember how to do that with Bootstrap, we can add in MT, and we just set a value there. So that is a margin at the top. So that gives us some more spacing there. So sometimes you do have to go kind of back and forth and eyeball it. And I know this doesn't look 100% like our template, but sometimes when you're adding in content, things do change. So lastly, let's finish this section off, and let's add in all of those images. So this again can be done with Bootstrap and adding in rows. So same way that we did these, I can simply add in a row, and this time the columns are going to be MD3 because we're going to have 3 of them, and we can simply just have images in there, images with paragraph. Just make sure that I'm ending that right one. I don't think I've closed that one off properly. Or maybe I've added too many. So let's just fix that up. And yeah, sometimes it does get a little bit confusing with Bootstrap. So actually, I need to add in another row there before I start this off. So let's do div class and row, and then we'll fix this up. Fixed up all of our opening and closing divs. So just make sure that everything is going to the main parent div. So there we go. So we're ready to add in an image. I'm going to grab the image that I have here. I'm going to use a smaller one. So do 300 by 200. And then we can also maybe put a paragraph underneath. So more info about this. Let's go back out, take a quick look and see what that looks like. So there we go. Maybe we can take this opportunity as well to add in some different colors from the Bootstrap utilities, because we did have a lot of really cool things we could do with the text and so on. So this is a great opportunity to maybe add in a background color, and we can add in text color as well. So let's do that within here. So more info about this, and within here we can add in a class, and let's do a background. So first one we'll do background and danger, and we'll do text and make the text white. So go back out and refresh it. So there we go. So we've got more info about this and our image. So we're ready to kind of use this as our template and make 4 more of these. And that's one of the things with Bootstrap, is that once you style something the way that looks right, take the time, make sure that it looks right, and then you can simply copy and redo it. So just going to update the text next, and instead of danger, let's make this really colorful. So we'll do success, and we'll do one for primary as well. And we also have warning, so we can do warning as well. So that will usually do like kind of an orange color. Primary and warning. And let's go take one more look at this. So there we go. So we've got our About Me page all ready to go. And so there you go. And obviously, depending on what you want your About Me page to look like, you can obviously customize it and really fine tune how this content is being presented. If you need an image, if you need a list, we've gone through how to add those, and then also how to add a bunch of text. So typically within the About Me page, you're going to have information, and maybe you might have some nice images if you've got a building or a storefront, maybe your customer service. So have all of those nice images, maybe some of the projects that you've worked on, a construction company, some of the construction being done, some of the completed construction projects. So just a nice way to kind of tell a story with some images, and that's what can be included on the About Me page. So go ahead and create your own About Me page and use some of the grid structure that we've seen within this lesson as well. Welcome back. In the previous lessons, we've built out the home page, we've built out the About page, and next, let's work on the services page. So we can do the same thing that we did earlier for the other 2 pages. We can go into our project here. We can open up template and save template. So just simply save template as services.html. And now we're ready to go to build out our project. And then of course we can make our updates here. So this can say services, and look at what we have to offer. And then down here, so maybe some more page information. So services again, and what we can do for you. And then go back into the page, refresh. So there we go. So services is all ready to go. So just like we did for home, just like we did for about, let's create a brand new sketch diagram here and plan out what we want our services page to look like. So for the services, typically maybe we want to highlight some projects. We can accomplish the services by highlighting some of our projects. So let's go back into our design here and let's set this up. And in this section, we're going to use cards, so Bootstrap cards, because these are ideal. So if, for instance, I want to have a preset type format here where maybe I've got an image and then I've got some information about that image, so that project. And it's all wrapped within one main container. So this would be the main container, the card. So maybe this one has a border around it. So I'm not sure how we add in, oh, there we can add in a border. So let's grab these two, put them on top. So we're going to basically format it like that, and then take this whole thing and duplicate it so that we can have multiple different projects. And duplicate them again. So maybe we're going to highlight 6 different services that we have to offer. So I got to grab all of this again and duplicate it. So that looks pretty good. So we'll have something like this for our services page. We're going to present it within a card format in Bootstrap and present out maybe 6 different types of services that we offer for our company. So I'm going to just rename this as well to be in line with services. And next lesson, we're going to open up our editor and we're going to build this out using Bootstrap. So that's coming up. Welcome back, and in the previous lesson we planned out what our services page should look like, and we're going to be using cards. So we've already set up the services page and we're all ready to go to start building this out. And of course, I know my drawings are fairly rough. They're just really quick drawings to get a generalized idea of what we want to display on the page. And obviously, depending on what type of website you're building, you may display it differently. So this lesson will really illustrate how we can use cards when we're developing out our web projects. And cards in Bootstrap really give us a great way to basically design what we want to output and really output in a nice format and fashion. So what we want to do, let's start out with, and we're going to start out with a container. So much like what we've done with the other sections, the idea is the same, that we start out with a container and then next we turn to the grid. So the grid is usually the default way to structure your content. So usually the next step is when we're placing content within a grid, and essentially pretty much anything can be thought of as a grid. So when we look at the services, we can see this is a grid. So we've got basically 3 rows, 2 columns, and then we've got the card information inside of those. So it's as easy as that in order to kind of plan that out. So we know the next step is that we need to build out our columns. So the columns are going to be 6. So let's set a size, so MD6. So that's our breaking point. We could also use LG, we could use SM, we could use MD. So there's various sizes that we can make use of. So next, we want to identify our card. And just as we did in the previous lesson, usually the best way to go, because these are very similar, so we want to have them all looking roughly the same. So you build out one and then you copy and paste that. So basically you set up a basic template and then you use that in order to build out the rest of your cards. So really the focus is build one really nice and neatly, get it presenting the information as needed, and then you can take it from there and simply copy and paste. So we want to have images on there. So for cards, we've got a default class, which is img top, which allows us to place an image on the top. So this is source, and we're going to use placehold it again. So just get that URL, so placehold it, and let's do this one. So do 500 by 300. And we'll close that off. So that we've got our image, and cards are structured in the same way that your website is. So we've got our head area, we've got a body area for the card. So we've got a few different options when it comes to cards. So next, let's do card body. And this is where the core of your content for the card goes. So any information, if you have any titles or anything like that, you can add that as well. So sometimes we use the heading so maybe heading H4 and card title. So this is service number 1. It all also depends on what types of services obviously you're offering. Paragraph, and then what we have left is card text. So this is all of that information, that blah 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 information about the service. Find out more. It's the best. Blah blah blah. So there we go. So let's open that up and see what that looks like. So know that we build that out. So we've got our first card there. So that looks, that represents the image there. It's half the size of the screen, and we can have all the services. So that's all we really need to do. And now we can simply grab that and duplicate it out. Now you do have an option here as well. So if, for instance, we know that we're allowed to have a column, up to 6 columns for each one of the Bootstrap grids, but we can also add in even more. So basically, if we wanted to, we could simply, we don't have to redo the rows, and we could just add in the columns as needed. So add in all the different items. And this is great if we've got the content coming in dynamically, because then we just simply need to loop through until our content is finished. So basically what I'm saying is you might not actually know how many services you're offering until you get to the point of outputting it. And you want to have the dynamic ability of adding more and updating it if needed. So I'm just adding in some additional text there so that it is different. So always be ready in case you need to make some updates. Flexibility for your design is really crucial. So there we go. So we've presented all of the services there. And maybe what we want to do at the bottom, so maybe we want to add some padding there at the bottom so it's not sitting right at the bottom there. So padding, bottom. So with cards, you also have a number of options on the Bootstrap website. You can go over to the feed. You can add in headers. You can add in and really customize the way that the cards come out. So again, it's up to you and how you want to present your content. So go ahead and create your own services page and try to use the cards. And if you need more information on the cards, also card header, great way to present your content. You can also add a footer as well within the cards. So a lot of options when it comes to cards. So there's card footer, card header. So you can really customize them and make them look fantastic. So again, try it out for yourself. And in the next lesson, we're going to be finishing off this project by updating and creating that contact page. So that's coming up. In this lesson, we're going to be planning out our contact page. So much like what we've done with the other one, go over to template, save template as contact.html. So that creates our contact page, update some of the content there. So we're going to update that main header, contact us, send us a message here. And then within the main container, so we can just call this contact and message us for more information. So we can add in some additional text there to really highlight what this is about. So go back out to the page, we'll just refresh it. So now we go over to contact. So we've got our contact page, we've got about, services, and for the services one, we actually didn't update that image. So that was one thing that we did miss. So maybe let's go quickly jump back over to there, and we did have that change. So let's grab that and place that in services there. So let's do, instead of business, let's do cats. I think cats was the other one. And before we forget, let's add that in over here as well. So I'm going to add that in, and this, going back over, let's see what our options were. So we've got cats, we've got people, so let's maybe just choose people for this one. So that we have different images that get represented on each page. So let's go through our pages. So we've got our cats, we've got our city, we've got our business, and we've got our people. So we're all ready to go, and the next step was to do a rough sketch. So let's do a new, and this is going to be our contact page. So create a brand new page for this one. And this one is going to be an input form. So we're going to have our basic input fields. And I'm not sure if we do have any great input fields. So basically, we're going to be adding them as input fields. So I'm just seeing if there are any input fields that I can use here as images. So for the input fields, we're just going to have to do a really rough sketch here. So I don't want to round that. So let's get rid of that rounding. I do want to have the border color. So the input field is going to go all the way across. So do them listing all the way across. Let's add in some text here because each input field is going to need a label. So input label. So depending on what we want within this input field, and we can ask for some default information. So we could have our input label. We could have maybe the person's name, phone number, email address, and then the last one will be just the overall message. And then this one, of course, for message, we want to have text area instead of input fields. And then lastly, let's add in a button here. So this is our button. So let's give it a blue color, make it a little bit smaller, and we're just going to write on it, send message. So basically that will give the users the ability to submit, apply, and let's make that white. So there we go. So we've got our basic layout for our contact. So we're going to ask some inputs here, name, email, maybe phone number or something like that, or message. We probably can just stick with a name and email for this one. So let's do that. So let's really simplify this. And of course, depending on how you want to represent it, you may or may not need additional field. So that's it. So that's our contact area. And next, let's build that out. Let's open up our editor and build out in Bootstrap. In the previous lesson, we planned out our contact page, and now we're all ready to build our input form for our contact. So let's open up our editors, open up contact. I'm going to go ahead and hide the sidebar. And much like what we've done in the earlier lessons, we're working within that main container content area. So we've already got the heading there. And what we need to do, the same as what we did earlier when we set up the other ones, we can structure this within a grid format. So let's set that up. So do div, class, and container. And then next, we need to set up a class, which is row. So we're always doing roughly the same thing where we're setting up this grid. And then within the grid, this is basically how we're structuring our content. So let's set this one up, MD, and we'll do 8. And much like what we've done over here where we've got MX Auto, let's copy that class and place that in here as well. So this is going to be where our main form contents are going to sit. Next, let's set up our form. So this is our basic contact form. And within the contact form, we need some form control. So this is Bootstrap's way of applying some styling. So control group, form group. And then within here, so we can apply a label. And then within the label, your name. And then the next one is going to be the input. So this is going to be the name input. So let's type and class. So for Bootstrap, all you need to have is that form control. So that allows us to group all of them together in ID, and we're just going to call it name. And let's close that one off. And for the label, we have to just add in for. So actually we don't need control group, we just need form group. So let me update that. So for, and now that we've given it a name, which is name as well. So that just ties it all together nice and neatly. So let's go back out to our Bootstrap page and just see how that's being presented. So there we go. So we've got our first field there. So just as what we've done earlier, we can simply copy and paste it. So once we have something that works, then we can simply copy and paste it out. So next we want to collect email. So your email. And if we want to use HTML5, we can set this as email, so it only accepts email addresses. If it's not formatted as a valid email address and you try to fill something out there, it's not going to accept it. And then we needed one more, so let's copy and paste that. So this one is actually going to be a text area, so it's going to be slightly different. So this one, we can also still use label, so message, and whatever the message is that the user wants to add in. So we can have message, and then this one is not an input, it's a text area. So we need to set a bunch of rows here. So let's set 7 rows, and the rows depending on, this is HTML, so depending on how wide, how deep you want it, and then also how wide you want it. So you can do a number of columns as well. And then class, and make sure that you include that form control, otherwise it won't look right. And give it an ID to tie it back to the label. So an ID of message. So there we go. And lastly, we need to add in a button, so an input button. So let's give this one div, and within here, we can just add in a button. So as we saw earlier, there's a number of different ways to add in buttons in Bootstrap, but because this one, we actually want it to submit the form, so that's why we got to stick with that submit type button. And send message. So there we go. So let's check this out, see what it looks like within our browser. So refresh. So there's our form. And again, we do need to add that spacing at the bottom. So maybe even it would have been a good idea to just have a default, so padding, bottom, and I believe we used 4 the last time. So maybe that might be something to add and update within your default template, because it seems like we were always had that footer just sitting right at that. So there we go. So that's our input form. We can also make it a little bit nicer as well. So we could do Jumbotron or something like that to make it stand out even more. So let's refresh. So there we've got more of kind of a standout for that message input area. So all ready to go. And this is our more responsive version of it. So same code. We see that whenever we shrink it down, we've got the more responsive version of it. So we can really shrink it down. And that's really the beauty of Bootstrap, is that it really handles all of this nicely on any size screen, that it allows us to shrink and to resize, and everything really fits in nice and neatly. So noticing as well, it's always a good idea to do some bug fixing. And I just noticed that the services, these images should be fluid. So that's something that we need to update and change. So going into here, instead of just having the regular images, we need to make those images fluid. So we need to add some classes here. So let's do that really quickly. and I'm just simply copying and pasting it in because I just noticed that on the smaller screens, these images are not taking up the full available width, and we do want them to take up that full width. So let's go and refresh and see if that looks any better. Make sure that we save this. And we see in services, so that's taking up the full space, and we still need to update that about as well. So we did have that image as fluid, it's MD3. So let's update the size of these images as well here so that they're coming in at 600, and go back and refresh it. Because what the image fluid does, and this is important to note, that image fluid, what it actually does is it allows us to have a maximum of 100%. So that was what was happening there, because our images were actually too small, and when we resized it, then they weren't coming out properly. So that was the downside of that responsive type design there. So that's it. So now we've done the contact, we've done the services, we've done the about page, and we've done the home page. So now it's up to you. So go ahead and open up your editor and create that content page, make some updates to it, and go through the website, make sure that everything is looking proper. And in the next lesson, we're going to do a quick overview of the web page design and the web page build, and we're going to do a quick run through of what we've done and how we've built it using Bootstrap. So that's all coming up. So now that we've completed all 4 pages for our website project, it's time to do a quick review and overview of what we've done and how we've accomplished this website. And the idea here is that you're able to take the code and use it as your own and build out your own websites in the same type of format as we've built this one. So really what we did is we started out and we created our basic template. So we decided what our web page needs to present on our website and what type of content. So we decided that we're going to have these images at the top, and we're going to have a uniform structure here for the top and the bottom. And the only thing that's really changing within the different pages is this main content area. So we built out the template first, made sure that that was functioning and looked the way that we wanted to represent it, and then we were ready to start building out the pages. And because this is only a 4-page website, it was relatively easy to update the template if we forgot anything with the template. If you have a really large website, then you've got to take a lot more time with the template to make sure that it's exactly right. So first of all, plan out the template. Then go into the page by page, plan out how you want to present your content. And a lot of this is actually going to be driven by what content and what digital assets you have. So if you've got some pictures, or if you've got some text, or if you want to sell some type of services, or if you have something new that you want to announce on your page, this is the place to do it. So that index page is that critical first view of what your web page is about for web users, and this is where you could present all of that content. So that's why we stuck with a lot of visuals, and we also added in that jumbotron and a call to action. The next, we looked at the About Me page. So the About Me page really is just describing some information and providing that user some more information about who you are and what you're selling or services that you're selling. So that was something else that we added in. And then the services pages, this was a great place to highlight some of the services that we offer and maybe make a sales pitch and try to get those services done. And then lastly, we have our contact area. And once the users have read about us, found out about our services, they're ready to contact us. So this is where we include that information that they can actually send us a message and make contact with us. And as well, we also included within the footer our social profiles, so the users can really easily click through and link to those social profiles. So essentially, that's how we built out the web page. And of course, you can customize it however you want. Make sure that you can add in all of your content, and also use the Bootstrap, getbootstrap.com as a reference point if you need to bring in any one of the components you can use those and bring those into your web page design. And also within the course as well, we've used quite a few placeholder images and placeholder text. So we've used that in order to make our website look more real, as we don't really have any real content in it. We're just adding in dummy content. And the source code is all included, so go ahead, try it out for yourself, and build out your own version of this web page.